We live in a world where our identities are often shaped by what we possess: our wealth, our positions, our relationships, and our achievements. These external markers shape how we view ourselves and how others perceive us. Yet there is a truth more profound than the one built on possessions: that losing everything can, in fact, be the beginning of discovering who we truly are, and, in that discovery, experiencing a freedom that transcends any external state. What if I told you that the very things you hold most dear, your material wealth, your career, your social standing, are, in many ways, the chains that bind you? These things, so easy to cling to, become the walls that keep us from fully embracing life in its rawest, most unfiltered form. And yet, as we cling to them, we imprison ourselves in a gilded cage. This is the paradox of human existence. Freedom often lies not in possessing, but in letting go. The first step in this journey toward freedom is recognizing the attachment we have to these external things. Human beings are creatures of habit and often find comfort in what they can touch, see, and control. It is natural to feel that security comes from our possessions and achievements, but it is precisely this attachment that can stifle our growth and tie us to fleeting concerns that ultimately diminish our capacity for deeper joy. Consider the profound irony when we lose something, whether through misfortune, disappointment, or the inevitable march of time. We are often confronted with a profound vulnerability. In this moment of loss, we may feel as though we are stripped bare, as though we have lost our very selves. Yet this vulnerability is not a curse. In truth, it is in this place of nothingness, when we stand without the crutches of external security, that we are often most capable of truly seeing the world and ourselves clearly. Loss strips us of illusions. It forces us to confront the truth that much of what we thought we needed was, in fact, unnecessary for our fulfillment. It forces us to ask the hard questions: who am I when I have nothing? What is left when all that I thought defined me has been taken away? In this starkness, we are given a unique opportunity to rediscover what is truly important. The loss may feel like a devastation, but it is, in reality, an invitation, a call to redefine freedom. True freedom does not lie in what we possess, but in what we are free to let go of. And when we let go of the need for external validation or material wealth, we are liberated in ways that go far beyond anything that could be given to us by the world. It is through vulnerability and loss that we begin to uncover a deeper strength, one that does not depend on the transient nature of our worldly possessions. The paradox of loss and freedom begins with a fundamental misunderstanding that many of us have about what constitutes freedom. We often think of freedom in terms of what we can acquire or possess: material wealth, power, status, or even emotional connections. This view of freedom is rooted in a mindset that equates liberty with the ability to control one's surroundings and circumstances. The more possessions or control we have, the freer we feel. However, true freedom, the kind that provides lasting peace and fulfillment, cannot be measured by what we own or dominate, but rather by what we are willing to relinquish. When we define freedom in terms of external acquisition, we unintentionally place ourselves into a cycle of dependence. This cycle becomes a trap. The more we accumulate, the more we believe we need. Each new possession or achievement demands our attention, and with it comes a subtle but steady encroachment on our inner peace. What starts as a sense of power and control begins to morph into an internal prison, as we become increasingly attached to our possessions and the identity we associate with them. The weight of these possessions becomes burdensome over time, creating a constant desire for more. We are no longer simply in possession of things; those things begin to possess us. We find ourselves measuring our worth against the things we have, the status we've earned, and the people we know. In this context, freedom becomes a fleeting and illusory concept. The paradox arises when we experience loss. Loss forces us to confront the reality that, despite all of our possessions and achievements, they cannot provide us with lasting happiness or security. When we lose something we have long depended upon, whether it is a job, a relationship, or a cherished material possession, we are often left feeling empty, vulnerable, and uncertain. In this moment of loss, however, lies the opportunity for true freedom. Loss strips away the illusion of control and possession. It exposes the fragility of the things we once believed would bring us security and happiness. In the absence of these things, we are given a chance to reevaluate our lives and our understanding of freedom. Ironically, it is through loss that we begin to see that freedom does not lie in accumulating more or holding on tighter to the things we have. True freedom emerges when we stop seeing our possessions and achievements as the foundation of our identity and happiness. When we lose something, we are forced to let go of the attachment that binds us to it. This act of letting go, whether it is through the loss of a job, a relationship, or material wealth, can feel terrifying at first. But it is through this very act of releasing what we thought we needed that we can discover a deeper sense of liberty. The true freedom found in loss is not the absence of responsibility or possessions, but the freedom from attachment. It is the freedom to live without constantly worrying about what we may lose next. When we are no longer tied to our possessions or external achievements, we are able to experience life more fully in the present moment. We can appreciate the relationships we have, the beauty around us, and the opportunities available to us without the weight of needing to hold on to them or control them. We realize that we are not defined by what we own or by what we achieve, but by who we are at our core. Loss often leads to personal growth, which is another form of freedom. When we are faced with the reality of losing something, we are pushed to grow in ways we may not have otherwise. We learn to adapt, to find new meaning, and to redefine ourselves in the absence of what we once considered essential. This growth, born out of adversity, enables us to become more resilient and open to new experiences. The freedom that comes from this growth is not just the freedom to live without material possessions, but the freedom to become the person we were always meant to be, unrestricted by the external forces that once dictated our choices. Human attachment to possessions, identities, and statuses is a fundamental part of the human experience. From the moment we are born, we begin to form connections to the world around us. These attachments often start innocently as we seek security and comfort. Over time, however, these attachments can evolve into dependencies, subtly influencing our thoughts, behaviors, and decisions. The more we acquire, whether material goods, social recognition, or personal accomplishments, the more our sense of self becomes tied to these external factors. This attachment creates a fragile foundation for our identity, as we begin to believe that we are defined by what we have or what we do. This belief can limit our personal growth and ultimately diminish our ability to experience true freedom. When we become attached to our possessions or status, we inevitably begin to rely on them for validation and a sense of self-worth. This attachment stems from the natural human desire for security. Possessions, accomplishments, and social standing provide a sense of control over the unpredictable and often chaotic world. As we accumulate more, we believe that we are better equipped to face life's challenges, and that these external markers of success will protect us from failure or loss. However, this reliance on external things creates a paradox. Instead of providing true security, these attachments increase our vulnerability because they tie our happiness and self-worth to things that are outside our control. When circumstances change or we lose what we have attached ourselves to, we are left feeling exposed and uncertain. One of the most significant aspects of attachment is the way it influences our perceptions of ourselves and our value. When we define our worth based on what we own or what we achieve, we are constantly seeking external validation to reinforce our sense of identity. The more we depend on external markers of success, be it a prestigious job, a luxurious home, or the approval of others, the more our self-esteem becomes contingent on these external factors. This creates a fragile sense of self that can easily be shattered by loss or failure. Our identity becomes entangled with what we possess, and if we lose it, we fear we are losing a part of ourselves. This fear of loss can be paralyzing, leading us to cling even more tightly to what we have, thus perpetuating the cycle of dependence and insecurity. Attachment to possessions and status can hinder personal growth. When we are deeply attached to certain outcomes or achievements, we may become blind to new opportunities and alternative paths. Our attachment narrows our focus as we become fixated on maintaining or acquiring more of what we already have. This fixation can prevent us from exploring new areas of life or embracing change, as we become afraid of losing what we have gained. Instead of being open to new experiences and perspectives, we stay locked in the comfort of what is familiar, unwilling to take risks or venture beyond the boundaries we have set for ourselves. This stunted growth reinforces the belief that we need more success, more possessions, more recognition in order to be happy or fulfilled. Attachment also limits our ability to experience the present moment fully. When we are focused on preserving or enhancing what we have, we are often preoccupied with the future or the past. We worry about maintaining our current status or achieving even greater success, and in doing so, we miss the richness of the present moment. Our minds are consumed with what is yet to come or what might be lost, and we fail to appreciate the opportunities and joys that exist right in front of us. Attachment leads us to look outside ourselves for fulfillment, when true fulfillment can only be found in the present moment, free from the need to hold on to what we already have. The danger of attachment is not only that it keeps us from experiencing true freedom, but also that it can lead to a constant sense of dissatisfaction. No matter how much we accumulate, it never feels like enough. The pursuit of more becomes an endless cycle, as the desire for more possessions, more status, or more achievements grows in tandem with our attachment to these things. This constant craving for more can erode our sense of contentment, leaving us perpetually searching for something that will never truly satisfy us. We begin to confuse the act of acquisition with fulfillment, believing that the next possession or achievement will finally bring us the peace and satisfaction we seek. Yet the more we acquire, the more we become trapped in a cycle of unfulfilled desires. The key to overcoming attachment lies in learning to detach from the idea that our possessions or achievements define us. This does not mean abandoning everything or renouncing all material goods. Rather, it means recognizing that our true value and sense of self-worth come from within, not from what we own or the recognition we receive. When we begin to see ourselves as separate from our possessions, we start to experience a greater sense of freedom. We no longer feel the need to hold on to everything tightly, as we realize that our identity and happiness are not dependent on external things. This shift in perspective allows us to approach life with greater openness, resilience, and joy, unburdened by the weight of attachment. We become free to experience life fully without the fear of loss or the pressure to accumulate more. In this space of detachment, we discover that true fulfillment comes not from what we possess, but from who we are. Vulnerability is often viewed as a weakness in many societies. We are taught from an early age to be strong, to hide our weaknesses, and to show only our successes. This cultural conditioning leads us to suppress our vulnerabilities, viewing them as flaws that need to be concealed in order to appear powerful or competent. The idea that vulnerability equates to weakness is so deeply ingrained in us that we often fail to recognize its true power. However, it is through embracing vulnerability that we can tap into a deeper, more enduring form of strength. This strength is not the kind that is reliant on external achievements or possessions, but one that is born from within, nurtured by openness and acceptance of our own humanity. When we experience loss, especially the kind of loss that strips away our material possessions, our status, or our sense of security, we are often left feeling exposed and vulnerable. This vulnerability, however, is not the end of our strength, it is the beginning of a new kind of freedom. In these moments of deep loss, we are forced to confront the reality that we are not invincible, and that the things we thought defined us can be taken away. While this may initially seem terrifying, it is in this moment of vulnerability that we have the opportunity to discover a more profound source of strength. Rather than seeing vulnerability as a weakness, we can learn to view it as a gateway to personal growth and resilience. It is through facing our vulnerabilities head-on that we develop the emotional and mental fortitude necessary to navigate life's challenges with grace and courage. Embracing vulnerability requires a shift in perspective. It requires us to let go of the illusion that we need to be perfect, invulnerable, and in control at all times. The act of embracing vulnerability is an acknowledgement that we are human, imperfect, fragile, and sometimes uncertain. This acceptance of our own limitations allows us to tap into a deeper well of resilience. When we stop trying to shield ourselves from pain or discomfort, we open ourselves to new possibilities and ways of being. Vulnerability becomes the path through which we can grow stronger because it allows us to face our fears, acknowledge our weaknesses, and in doing so transcend them. There is a great strength in being open about our vulnerabilities. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create the space for authentic connection with others. Instead of hiding behind masks of strength or invulnerability, we allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, flaws and all. This openness fosters deeper relationships, as others can relate to our experiences and struggles. Vulnerability allows us to be real with ourselves and with others, creating a sense of trust and understanding that is impossible when we are constantly trying to present a perfect facade. In this sense, vulnerability becomes a bridge, not a barrier. It connects us to others on a human level, allowing us to share in the collective experience of being imperfect, flawed, and yet capable of resilience and growth. Through loss, we are often forced to confront the very things we fear the most: our limitations, our mortality, and our vulnerability. Rather than resisting or numbing these feelings, we can choose to face them directly. By doing so, we discover an inner strength that does not rely on external circumstances. This strength is born out of the ability to be vulnerable without shame, to acknowledge our fears and insecurities, and to move forward in spite of them. It is the kind of strength that enables us to keep going when life seems overwhelming, to persevere through hardship, and to continue growing even when faced with adversity. This kind of resilience is not about suppressing our vulnerabilities, but about embracing them as part of the human experience. The freedom that comes from embracing vulnerability is profound. It is a freedom that arises when we no longer feel the need to hide our true selves from the world. Instead of being trapped in a cycle of self-protection, we are free to be authentic, to experience life in its fullness, and to connect with others in meaningful ways. This freedom is not contingent on external circumstances, but on our internal acceptance of who we are. It is the freedom to be vulnerable, to acknowledge our imperfections, and to embrace them as part of our journey. This freedom comes from knowing that we do not need to be perfect or invulnerable to be worthy of love, success, or happiness. Vulnerability is not a one-time act, but a continual process of embracing the unknown, the uncertain, and the uncomfortable. Every time we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we expand our capacity for strength and resilience. It is through these repeated acts of vulnerability that we build the emotional muscle necessary to navigate life's ups and downs with greater ease. Each time we let go of our need for control or perfection, we become more adaptable, more open, and more capable of facing life's challenges with grace. Over time, vulnerability becomes less something to fear and more something to embrace, as we realize that it is through embracing our vulnerability that we find our true strength. The act of embracing vulnerability leads to a deepened sense of freedom. It is the freedom to be who we truly are, without fear of judgment or rejection. It is the freedom to experience life in all its complexity and beauty, without the need to control or manipulate our circumstances. This freedom is not born out of power or perfection, but from the courage to be vulnerable, to face the unknown, and to trust in our own ability to navigate the challenges that life presents. By embracing vulnerability, we unlock a source of strength that cannot be taken away, a strength that lies within us all, waiting to be discovered.